Welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show, your one-stop shop for weird news, movie reviews, otherworldly, and paranormal shenanigans. We'll take a dive into what's going on in creepy pop culture. You can follow Creepin' It Real Show on Twitter at creepin_it. You can email us at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com. And you can also go to our website, creepinitshow.com. Welcome to Creepin' It Real. I'm one of your hosts, Yardley, coming live and direct from Atlanta and from the great state of California. How's it going, Moni?
What's up, everybody? It's going well. We actually have some sunshine here for the weekend. I've heard that we can't enjoy it for too long, but we are loving it. We're breaking out the shorts, everybody in their flip-flops. It's fantastic.
Hey, that's pretty good. It's pretty sunny, on this side. And for the most part, it's been cool. But today is one of those slightly chilly, but very beautiful days. So really can't complain. How's it up your end, Christy?
Yeah, up here, same thing. I went to a half outdoor, half indoor St. Patrick's Day celebration at the Battery, which is the new baseball park here in Atlanta. And it's basically like an entire city in there. They have everything, tons of bars and clubs, and basically the entire place, the entire Battery was one giant celebration for St. Patrick's Day. So happy St. Patrick's Day today to my fellow co-hosts. And yeah, we did it right. We started at like noon and finished at like 4 a.m. So I don't know what the hell I was thinking, but yeah.
Hey, if you're going to do it, go all in.
Exactly.
That's what I say.
My best friend's birthday is today too. So she always, that's what we were doing, was celebrating her birthday. And whew, I'll tell you what, it's going to take me a few days. Otherwise, it's going well. I actually got to wear a almost like summer-like dress for the celebration is what I was getting at. And yeah, that was not planned. It was a little chilly, but not bad. So no complaints.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't go outside as much, yesterday. I actually ended up buying like this video game. So I ended up lushing around the house, playing that game and, getting a little fucked up. But so I enjoyed myself as well. Now, initially, I didn't have any weird news, but I will give an update. So there's been more reviews on Jordan Peele's Us that have been submitted by critics on Rotten Tomatoes. Right now, it's still standing at 100% with 55 reviews.
Wow.
It seems to be pretty good. I think Get Out ended with 98%, but on March 22nd, I think we'll all be able to formulate our own opinions on what's going on. But at least as far as horror movies are concerned, that's a pretty good sign.
I can't wait.
Now, Christy, so... Tell us about these vandals.
Y'all be on the lookout for a 800-year-old mummy head. I think Moni has already established that Ireland seems to be the Florida of the world, and they never disappoint for sure. Vandals stole the head of an 800-year-old mummy in Ireland. They broke into an historic church in Dublin and stole the head of an 800-year-old mummy nicknamed the Crusader. The grim discovery was made by a guide at St. Mission's Church. He was getting ready to open the site to the public. In addition to the Crusader, several other corpses were damaged. What the fuck is wrong with people? Including a nun dating back 400 years ago. They broke open the vault. It's a heavy, big steel door, and broke open one of the coffins. Parts of the contents of the coffin have been dragged out, says the Archdeacon of Dublin, Dave Pierpoint. Damn, these people who have been lying at rest for years and years, and to have them desecrated in such a sacrilegious way is so distressing and disturbing. I can't put it in words. I'm quite disgusted. Yeah. So
that's kind of a sad take on the whole thing, you know?
Yeah.
Sheesh.
Well, I don't even know if I would want to steal something that I could never show anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why
it's pretty weird.
The person, when somebody stole the Mona Lisa, it's like, why? What the hell? It's not like you can put it up in your apartment or something. I mean, it's like the most famous painting in the world. You dumbasses. I can't sell it.
Like that, you could black market. But like something like this, I read a story. It was a fiction story, but it was about a guy who kept something from his museum that didn't belong to him. It ruined his whole fucking life. He couldn't even let people like come visit him at his house because he was afraid they would discover what he had done. Like,
stupid.
I don't know. I don't get it. Is what I'm saying.
That and
Stop
then
it, people.
being
Stop it.
dead people. Like, let him be. Like, how fucked up do you have
I
to
hope
be?
they get the biggest curse ever.
He's probably going to be haunted now. He's going to like return the head and be like, I'm sorry. Like those people that always take the volcano pieces and then return them in Hawaii.
Yes. Yeah.
They're like, every time since I took this rock, my life's turned to shit. Take it back.
But think about all the crazy shit that goes on. Like, does this really surprise you that someone would do something like this?
No, but it's just disappointing. I feel
not
like a
in
mother.
The Florida of the world.
Yeah. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. That's my typical mom line, and that pretty much applies here, too.
So, all right, well, let's move along from just horrible criminals to what you got for us, Moni?
Well, just kind of going along with our Bigfoot theme of the last couple of weeks.
Which will be posted today.
For $5,000. What's that?
I said which will be posted today. The Bigfoot episode.
That'll be good.
I'm running a little behind. What you gonna do?
It's all good. We're all a little behind.
Yeah.
For $5,000, you can hunt Bigfoot with Jose Canseco. So did you guys know that Jose Canseco was like a truth-seeking, like that's his post-MVP life is truth-seeking and trying to find aliens and trying to find all this stuff. Have you heard that about him?
No, actually. The things that I hear of him, I think have been more on the political end, of things, but I didn't even know that he was into this.
I'm not a fan of his. I think he's as dumb as a bag of hair. So I have zero desire to go Bigfoot hunting with him. I can just picture it now. We'd be like bashing our heads in, just trying to hear him like complete a sentence.
But it's not even just going with him. It's 5 stacks to go with him. So no.
Yeah.
Even more so.
I'm hoping that covers like your expenses along the trip. It would have to, I would think. But apparently he also had a series of tweets a few weeks ago saying that aliens had given him the secrets to time travel. So that sounds like he's totally sane.
He's bananas. And you said you would be in his RV with him. Yeah, no thank you. I don't want to be in an RV with a nutter like that.
I mean, like, if he knows secrets of time travel, maybe he could use it to get the fuck out of here. Bye. Because he also apparently last July responded to the Me Too movement by bragging about having been molested by lots of women. Lovely. So he's just, he's a really...
My question is, it says, I will help you book your flights to Vegas and set itineraries. So Bigfoot is in Vegas?
If Bigfoot is anywhere,
I guess it's where it makes sense. Yeah. Oh, God.
I mean, I just can't. Weeks ago, you see a lot of shit there. I'm not sure if Bigfoot is one of the things you see, but, for $5,000, who knows?
Exactly.
So,
wow. He's up there. He's like... He's like Bigfoot's enabler, where he's like, charge people $5,000 to find me and I can have gambling money. He's like,
well,
I think molest Jose Canseco and travel in time with him and everything else, it only costs you $5,000. So you're welcome.
Well, apparently there's $10,000 less dollars that he can count on this podcast.
Yeah, definitely not for me.
Well, let's go a little bit back in time, back to 1982. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the movies that came out in 1982, including Poltergeist, which is the movie that we are going to review today. So in 1982, it brought us The Thing, E.T., Blade Runner, Conan the Barbarian, Tron, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, The Dark Crystal, The Toy, The Last Unicorn, The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, Rocky III, Swamp Thing, and Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan, and also Annie. Now, there were other movies that came out that year, but I'm just kind of highlighting, and maybe it's like my bias towards, these movies were the movies when I was a lot younger, so I always remember them. Now, some of my favorites, of course, is Poltergeist, The Thing, Conan the Barbarian, Swamp Thing and The Dark Crystal, and The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. I even have that on Blu-ray. That one, that's a good movie.
I cannot believe all these movies came out in the same year. I was obsessed with several of these movies. Poltergeist, of course, E.T., Tron, The Dark Crystal, The Last Unicorn. I'm still obsessed with The Last Unicorn. And Swamp Thing was my jam. I think they're remaking it or re-releasing it or something. I just saw news about Swamp Thing and I was like, holy shit, I was obsessed with that movie. Every time I went to the damn video store, that's the first one I wanted to rent. My mom wanted to like kill herself. She was so tired of seeing that movie because I was like, I want to get Swamp Thing.
Oh yeah, and back in the day when it came on HBO, I used to watch it every time it came on.
Yeah.
I was watching that along with Poltergeist. Are any of these movies that are on here some of your personal favorites, Moni?
I love Poltergeist, which is obviously what we're going to talk about today. The Thing is way up there for me. I have seen a lot of these other ones, but again, sorry, a lot of them came out kind of when I was born.
You were like a year old, right?
Yeah. So as a horror fan, obviously like The Thing and some of these other ones I've seen because of that reason, but I haven't necessarily gone back and watched all of these. I've definitely seen The Toy. I don't even know what The Last Unicorn is.
Oh
Is
my
that one
God.
any good?
It's a
Should I check that
cartoon.
out?
It's a
Yeah, it's
cartoon.
It's a cartoon.
Yeah, I
Nice.
freaking love it.
Clearly, I need to see The Best Little Whorehouse just for the
Oh
name.
yeah,
but,
you absolutely do. It's hysterical.
It's one of those movies that there are moments in it where there's kind of singing, but the highlight of it is when they're singing in the whorehouse.
Yeah.
It's got Burt Reynolds and Dolly Parton in it, so I mean, come on.
Can't go wrong.
yeah, I
there.
have heard of it. So I definitely, it's one of those that's been on my list. So now I've got to make it a priority.
And I'm sure this will be controversial for some people who are major Star Trek people, but Wrath of Khan was my favorite. My favorite. Like remembering when they put that thing in his ear and it like controlled, like I was so freaked out by that. It freaked me the hell out. I remember that, like watching that and being totally freaked out. And so that ever since I just, because of my response to that one part in that entire movie, it's been my favorite ever since. It's just crazy to see all of these listed together and seeing that they were all released in the same year. That just really blows my mind. Wow.
I don't think that you're going out on a limb by saying that Wrath of Khan is your favorite. Most of the people that I know who are Star Trek fans say that that's one of their favorites as well. Good. It's my favorite one. Yeah. Definitely.
I didn't know. I'm not a Star Trek person per se. I mean, it's fine. I'll watch them. But so I don't know, like some people might think that one's crap. I don't have no idea. But yeah, I definitely loved that one. That was awesome.
All right. Well, let's move on a little bit and talk about, TVs, the TV set in horror and film. So we know that imagery is something that's pretty prevalent in films and horror films especially. As an example, the Poltergeist poster, we see Carol Ann gazing into the TV. And I just wanted to give a few examples of TVs being used in horror movies and the meanings behind it. As I was doing my research on this, I did a little Googling, and it was very hard to word things in a way that would lead me to a lot of the horror movies that have, where the television set literally does play a part, in the story. Mm-hmm. So I found this site called Horror Homeroom, and they had, I don't know, maybe 8 different movies listed. And I'm just going to give a few examples of this. Of course, we're going to do a review of Poltergeist today on the show. And it suggests an escalating anxiety about the absorption of children literally into the television. So we see in the movie that when Carol Ann's parents and siblings aren't paying attention to her, the TV is the babysitter. And I'm pretty sure that both of you have probably used the TV as a prop.
Hell yes.
A time
Lifesaver.
Yeah.
So, we all know that Carol Ann ends up disappearing through a portal and literally ends up in the TV. And there's a second scene in the movie where Carol Ann is staring at a static-filled TV in the kitchen, and her mother, Diane, tells her not to look at the static because it'll hurt her eyes. So as she's walking by, she clicks the TV to the next channel, and it ends up being a war movie that Carol Ann continues to watch. So I thought that was kind of funny that even when you think you're saving someone, they can't really escape certain things that they're seeing on television. And another movie that's I have it up pretty high because this particular horror movie didn't really take itself seriously. And I thought that it was pretty good, was the first Scream movie back in 1996.
Yeah,
And
I still love that movie.
That was great.
yeah. And a suggestion in that movie of the dangers of believing that the rules of film and TV are real, so to speak, and the dangers of immersing yourself too fully into television can be a disaster. I definitely can agree with that. So you have Gore Verbinski's 2002 film The Ring that makes it clear that it's not so easy to stand outside to resist the seductions of television. So I got a question for both of you. Has television symbolism been something that either of you have thought about when watching horror movies?
Yes, actually, it's funny that you had this to talk about today because was it Friday night? I was rewatching the new Halloween film because my husband hadn't seen it, and they used television in that movie. And then actually, I was reminded since the original Halloween is one of my favorite slasher films of all time, that they use television a lot in that one, and especially in the first one because there are children involved. Uh, that is used as sort of a way to kind of escalate that feeling of dread. And yes, definitely the teenagers are running around like, I'm going to go have sex tonight. I'm going to party. And the kids they're supposed to be babysitting are just watching horror films, like probably that are too scary, like for them and that kind of thing. So I was just thinking about that. I actually mentioned it to my husband and I was like, the use of TV in this. He's like, yeah, they do that a lot. I'm like, but that's kind of an homage to the original where they're kind of pulling that in, but it doesn't work as well in the new Halloween just because there's not kids watching it. I kind of like what you're saying about like TV as babysitter and kind of beware the allure of the television. So yeah, just kind of interesting. I've definitely noticed it before.
I actually never really put two and two together that was kind of the message that, movies like The Ring and Poltergeist, I don't necessarily know if it was like that was their intent to, revolve around that, but interesting that I just had never put that together as far as the TV, the dangers of TV. And then like literally either a monster or, that little girl's like crawling out of the TV to kill you or it's sucking you in to another world. And I just never, it's interesting. I never really thought about it, but it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, whenever you look at, especially in Steven Spielberg films and things like that, he always has, different messages that that he kind of throws in there. But I think most filmmakers use that as an opportunity to, to make certain points in their films. And for the most part, sometimes most of the time for me, it works at getting a point across, but maybe the delivery might be certain things that turn people off. A big thread, nowadays is, people saying that there's, too much politics or too much this, that, and the other in movies, but that's always been an outlet that people, got their messages out was through, visual communication. So yeah, I don't necessarily have a problem with it unless you're like beat over the head and it's really pushing something on you. But for the most part, I think that people do a decent job of keeping that at a level that keeps the movie enjoyable.
Yeah, I think it's a fun way to set a tone. And I also think that fun way to set a tone and that it's a nice way to kind of pay honor to like another film that you like. Like if you're the creator of this film and you're like, hey, this other film inspired me, you could kind of throw it in there. I think that's kind of cool too.
Yeah. And well, you know what? Before we start our review, let's talk a little bit about what a poltergeist is. So in ghost lore, a poltergeist, which is German for noisy ghost or noisy spirit, is a type of ghost or spirit that's responsible for physical disturbances, such as loud noises and objects being moved or destroyed. They are purportedly capable of pinching, biting, hitting, and tripping people. Most accounts of poltergeists describe the movement or levitation of objects such as furniture and cutlery or noises such as knocking on doors. There have traditionally been described as troublesome spirits who haunt a particular person instead of a specific location. Such alleged poltergeist manifestations have been reported in many cultures and countries, including the United States, India, Japan, Brazil, Australia, and most European nations. Early accounts date back to the 1st century. So this was the first time that I had watched Poltergeist in, decades.
Mm-hmm.
I just haven't revisited it. And I actually saw it on Amazon Prime, and that kind of put it in my head that, hey, I haven't seen that in a while. So I ended up choosing it for the show. And when I watched the movie, it was just as outstanding as it was however many years ago that I had watched it.
Yeah.
But I have to ask both of y'all, because I was talking to this about this with the person at work about how PG movies back in the day are way more edgier than they are today.
Yeah.
Did this movie feel like a PG movie to you?
No
Hell
way.
no.
And as I was thinking about this morning. First, Poltergeist is my absolute number one favorite horror movie of all time. Like, I love this movie. I just think it's so freaking brilliant. And once shit starts ramping up on this thing, it's fucking scary. When I was a kid and I watched this movie, the part where he peels his face off in the bathroom, it took me probably, I want to say, 6 or 7 years before I would watch that part. I had never seen it before. I always covered my eyes during that part. I don't know why. It was just, and then I think it was even scarier not watching that part because the sounds that he makes when he's peeling his face off. It definitely is not PG.
Yeah.
There's no way in hell this movie would be PG today. I mean, that blows my mind. I did not know it was PG. That's mind-blowing to me because that movie's fucking scary.
And you know what? It's a little bit of commentary to me about American culture is that something like this can be so horrifying and yet be PG because there's no blood and there's no sex. And as soon as you don't have bad words and you don't have, sex happening, then it can be PG. But it's like it's scary as shit. Like, what is wrong with everybody, But oh no, it's words and sex that can hurt us. Like, hello, Puritans. Like, violence is scary and horrifying situations are scary, and that warrants more than a PG on this film.
It doesn't have boobies, so it's PG.
Yeah, exactly.
What? No, not even a PG-13. Are you freaking kidding me?
Well, I don't know, because in the show notes I set the example though. Another movie that I love. It's super cheese, but it's a movie that I remember growing up, and I have it in my collection. Is Barbarella?
Yeah,
was rated PG as well.
I can't
and if you've seen Barbarella,
yeah,
exactly.
That thing's sexual as hell.
Yeah, and there's boobies in it too.
Yeah.
I mean, the see-through space costume is still a winner.
It was one of my first movies in which is funny because the sex scene in there is outer space. It's the first quote unquote sex scene I had ever seen. And I was really confused because they're not touching each other, but having sex. And I was like, is that how it's done? Like, what? I was so confused. So that's crazy.
That for sure.
Yeah, it is. So y'all ready to dive into
Hell
the movie?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so the movie starts off with Steve and Diane Freeling. They're living a quiet life in a community in Orange County, California. And what the hell is it about Orange County, California, that all these horror movies and crazy things go on?
I grew up there. It's the perfect place. That's where I spent the first 32 years of my life. It's the perfect place to kind of have that whole, I don't know, kind of Stepford. Everything is perfect, but too perfect. Yeah. It's easy to have horrifying things going on that nobody knows anything about. Just like they show in this film, it's all new developments, expensive. Everybody's trying to kind of keep up with the Joneses. It's like the perfect place for a nice family who's trying to kind of keep up to have something really horrifying happen to them, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So they're trying to live a quiet life in a community in Orange County, California called Cuesta Verde, where Steven is a real estate developer and Diane looks after their 3 children, Dana, Robbie, and Carol Ann. So Carol Ann awakens one night and begins conversing with the family's television set, which is displaying static following a sign-off. So I know that there are some listeners here who are old enough to remember a time when television used to have dignity and was actually off the air and all static from 11 to 5 a.m. So
isn't that crazy? I remember that. I remember that.
Look, basically, when Ron got off work and went home, all of our TVs went off. And when Ron came back to work in the morning, all of our TVs came back on. So it's so funny to watch this and remember that, oh, yeah, that used to be a thing. Yep. So the following night, while everyone else is asleep, Robbie is staring outside at a twisted tree outside his window. And he's freaked out by it so much that he retreats to his parents' bedroom to go to sleep with them. Carol Ann in the other room starts fixating on the television as it starts to transmit ecstatic again. Suddenly, a ghostly white hand emerges from the television, followed by a violent earthquake. As the shaking starts to subside, Diane, Steve, and Robbie awaken, and Carol Ann is at the foot of the bed, and she says, "They're here."
The most famous horror phrase of all time.
Yeah.
Damn, that's scary.
Yeah, that's one of those phrases where definitely someone says it. If you're above a certain age, you definitely know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
All right, so the very next morning, all types of strange events start happening. Steve ends up calling his job and realizing he's the only person that had felt the earthquake. So at the breakfast table, a drinking glass filled with milk spontaneously breaks in Robbie's hand. He then looks down to find his silverware at the breakfast table has all been bent. A little bit later on, we see Debbie showing Steve that their furniture can move from one side of the room to the other on its own if it's placed in certain places. Now, would y'all have freaked out by the furniture moving? Because it seemed like Steve was the only person who was slightly disturbed by it, and Diane and Carol were just having a blast with it.
That would have creeped me the fuck out. I actually really like that scene because of like that jump moment where her daughter's right in front of her, so it couldn't have been her daughter, and she like looks away and looks back and all the chairs are stacked. That's creepy as shit. Like that's like grab your kids and leave the fucking house moment for me. But
yeah, you think? Yeah, and that's when she officially names them the TV people.
Yeah, and I wonder, something I always wondered is like when she's sliding Carol Ann across the floor, I'm wondering if that was one of the things that kind of alerted this spirit, to the presence of a living thing or whatever. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, I think that Steve's reaction, he just looked like he was shook. He wasn't really going. Yeah. He just looked like it really hit him somewhere, and he was like, I don't know what the hell is going on here. But later on that night, the tree that Robbie was looking at in his backyard ends up coming alive and grabbing him through the bedroom window. So, of course, Steve hears what's going on. He goes up to rescue Robbie. And, of course, that separates people out a little bit. So Carol Ann ends up getting sucked through the portal in her closet, because Diane and Steve are outside trying to pull poor Robbie, out of this tree. And that was a pretty cool sequence as well. One thing that they did well in this movie is they really showed up, people's anxiety. Like it's very busy. So it's understandable that they could be in one part of the house, maybe helping someone else, and then forgetting a child in another part of the house. I thought that was pretty cool. So what did y'all think the effects for the tree eating Robbie?
Well, at the time, go ahead. At the same time, go ahead.
I'm a huge Ghostbuster fan. Like that's the one that I watched as a kid, like over and over. And so a lot of the effects kind of harken back to obviously that same era of that's the best they could do. And this movie, actually watching it again last night, made me realize I don't need fantastic special effects to get the point and to feel scared. Yeah, it takes you out of it a little bit when you see like a terrible effect and you're just like, come on. But part of me was also like when the chairs were moving and stuff, just kind of admiring how really simple tricks that they were doing. Like obviously that must have been on a string somewhere, and like were still super useful and super able to kind of get that impact across of like, okay, so it's obviously a string, but you're still able to put yourself in that situation. Like, holy shit, that's really scary. So I think this movie is just so timeless that way, is like the effects don't have to be perfect to make this movie scary, and the characterization's good and kind of a great story and everything else.
Well, looking at the effects in themselves, I mean, they hold up to me as well. I thought that they picked their spots, and I thought a lot of that stuff really did work, and you can really tell Spielberg's touch on things as you go through the movie, how they use music, and they just, this is probably, at least to me, probably the most perfect horror type movie that I've seen, because I
Agreed.
didn't really have any part of this movie. It didn't feel like it drug. It always, it always had you involved in something. And I
Yeah.
thought that the music was great as well. So after Carol Ann is sucked through the portal in her closet, and they save Robbie, they end up going back upstairs and they can't find her. So they look in the closet and then they dig all of this stuff that was being sucked through the portal away from the front of the closet. And then there's something the size of a little girl's body with a sheet over it. And it ends up being the clown. Now, I don't want to talk about the clown too much in this because the clown has its own spot a little bit later in the movie. But they think that it's Carol Ann and they think that she's dead. They pull off the sheet and it's the clown. So the Freelings realize that she's been taken when they hear her voice coming from the television set that's turned to an empty channel, or a static field channel, so to speak. So they end up calling a group of parapsychologists from UC Irvine, Dr. Lesh, Ryan, and Marty. They visit the Freeling house to investigate, and they determine that the Freelings are experiencing a poltergeist intrusion. They discover that the disturbances involve more than one ghost. So during their investigation, we see a sequence where 100-year-old jewelry falls from the ceiling and the spirits of the dead start emanating through Carol Ann's bedroom door. They disperse and fly through everyone in the room. All of the events are recorded by the parapsychologist's equipment and also drives Marty to quit. And Ryan stays with the family while Dr. Lesh leaves to temporarily analyze the findings. Now, what did y'all think about the sequence of Debbie calling out to Carol Ann when they're trying to figure out where she is? I mentioned before that these scenes stay very busy, but the character of Debbie is a really great character. I'm gonna have to pull up my IMDb. And do y'all know the actress's name? I just didn't click on the link for the IMDb.
The mom,
Yeah,
Jo
the
Beth
mom.
Williams.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She is awesome, and
That
very
scene relies on the strength of her acting because
yeah.
you don't see Carol Ann go through her. I mean, you see like a wind whoosh. And also for the investigators to believe her, it's like, yes, they've seen other things. But as far as this moment where she feels her child, that's something that they can't measure per se. And so just her performance of like this mom, it's so
Powerful.
Christy, it's so fucking relatable as like,
Oh, totally.
you can see why these people have stayed in this house because they believe their daughter's there. They know their daughter's there. And you can see the desperation, and they're shaking, they're nervous of like living this way and not letting anyone know the hell that they're going through. And then the moment where she feels her daughter and she can smell her, like that's so real as a mom. Like, holy shit, that was really well done on her part.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, it's really even more, just effective when you're a parent. Like I watched that scene so many times as a kid, and yeah, it was impactful, but definitely get your feelings out when you see it now as a mom.
Yeah.
Well, also the parapsychologist, as we're going through this journey with Carol, she's putting her faith in these people, and a lot of the things that they're seeing were seemingly new things to them as well. Now, would your first step would be to call some paranormal investigators, or would your first step would have been to call the police?
Man, we're the wrong audience for that because we watch too many horror films.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you call the police and report a missing persons because I tell you what, that's covering your ass. Unfortunately, in this day and age, just in case she turned out to be regular kidnapped or something like that, you need to cover your ass so it doesn't look like you did that to her.
Yeah,
so I guess you make that report, but after that.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, if this goes wrong, they're going to swear down y'all killed that little girl. So,
no, that's the problem. Exactly. Because like if they report it, like how would they do what they needed to do to get her back? Because they knew it wasn't something that it wasn't a human that had taken her. So it was just what a weird position to be in. Like, what do? If you call the police, then the police are going to be on your ass investigating you while you're sitting here trying to get your kid back. That would be, but again, like you're saying, you definitely want to cover your bases because no telling what the turnout what would happen. So what a
It was nice in the purpose of this film, though, to not waste time with the whole cliche, like, cop has suspicions about you and
yeah.
cop's on your ass, and then cop comes around when he sees irrefutable evidence. Like, it's kind of nice to not waste time in this perfectly told story, like, having that whole element in it.
And also, just a shout out to casting because everybody who played the parapsychologists were great. And I guess now we can kind of go back to what Christy was talking about earlier with Marty, who ended who ended up apparently being so shook that he quit. But I wanted to ask y'all, at least up to this point in the movie, what were your favorite scenes? And I actually put in the show notes, mine was easily Marty hallucinating that he was pulling his face off in the bathroom. Like Christy, when I saw that shit, I was like, oh man, it was just, it was pretty messed up. And then there's always something about like wet meat hitting the bathroom sink with the blood going down the drain that makes you, that makes you kind of sick to your stomach. But were there any other highlights up to this point that stood out to you, Moni?
The clown. Anything with the clown.
Yeah. And
I don't know.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
We're just talking all over each other today, aren't we?
Yeah. For sure.
One of the things that really impacted me, and I guess we haven't got it's right after this point, but the stairs, when they start coming down the stairs, and it was right after he peeled his face off. That really just blew my mind. Like I was like as a child just mesmerized just with the way they did that. That was probably one of my favorite scenes, barring of course the clown that ruined me for clowns for my entire life. So that scene was just, I don't even know why. It was just so sad and kind of beautiful and scary all at the same time. And it just really stuck with me.
We kind of spoke on that earlier. It's kind of a mixture of all of those things that you said, along with the music that they're playing, the way that the lighting is hitting everybody, and then of course the expressions of all the actors and actresses. I think that they really sold that they were seeing something for the first time coming down those stairs. So I totally agree with you. That was definitely a great moment. And then when they kind of went away and it kind of, touched them somehow. I don't know how to really explain it. You can see it, when you watch the movie, but I thought that was great. So after all of those things happen and they start discovering the disturbances, Dana and Robbie are sent away for their safety. And Steve finds out in an exchange with his boss, Lester Teague, played by the late James Karen, who passed away at around the middle of, or the last bit of last year, that Cuesta Verde is built where a cemetery was once located. Steve is also offered to be a partner at the firm that has future plans, including building a community at another graveyard site on the hill right above Cuesta Verde. So I just want to ask y'all a question about superstition. Are you for or against building over or relocating the dead for a housing community?
Well, it's one of the reasons why this works so well in Orange County and out in Southern California in general. Like, for instance, I live backed up to two different Indian areas, Native American areas. It's Pala and Pechanga, literally right behind the street, just behind mine. And then it's Pechanga across the street, and it's Pala right behind us. So it's kind of in Southern California, unfortunately, for better or worse, it's par for the course. Like, you're not going to build something new that isn't on top of, probably Native American land in general. I don't know so much about burials, but, people were buried where they were buried. I'm definitely not for it, but that's kind of how it is out here. And that's why Orange County, it works really well because that's actually what they do still there.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's not a good idea. I think it's disrespectful of the dead, but I mean, our entire planet is a cemetery. So I'm probably sitting on a dead body right now. When I posted a video on our Patreon, I showed a spot up here. There's a historical cemetery. There's a couple of them over where the old mill was during, that was a big Civil War hotspot. They took over that mill and used that area as kind of like a base camp. And right down the street from there is an old cemetery. And when you walk down the rows of the gravestones, they just stop. I mean, they just run into a fence. And then on the other side of the fence are homes. And one of these homes was, they had a gravel driveway and they were getting it cemented. And they had to dig down a little bit and hit a coffin in their driveway and had to go and get it excavated. And so they apparently did that right down the street from my house. Which is really bizarre. And these people all aware that this is, like they've hit coffins in other backyards and stuff several times. So
there's a shopping center right down the street from my house, and they have, if you live out in the Temecula area, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. They have two, I think, higher up, like chief, Indians buried there, and they built a Kohl's directly next to it, and they ended up building like a little tiny like Q&A historical, basically kind of like a little shack almost, that you can come and ask volunteers questions about the history of the area. But it's just so funny to have like, can't build here because there's two bodies, and then like right next door is like Walmart and Kohl's and like all these other things. It's just kind of part of the charm out in this area, I guess.
Yep.
Well, so the remaining parapsychologists, Dr. Lesh and Ryan, they end up calling in the big guns after what they had just seen, a spiritual medium, Tangina Barons, who's played by Zelda Rubinstein, who's a fixture in all these Poltergeist movies. She is so great, in this movie.
She is fantastic.
Yeah. Now, how many Poltergeist movies were there, though? There was Poltergeist 2 for certain.
Yeah, there's 3. I think 4, I want to say. I didn't.
And then the remake.
Yeah. The remake was done really well. I was happy with the remake, but I'm not real thrilled with even part 2. I mean, I was so excited when I found out they were going to have a part 2. And that's when the actress, and I cannot remember her name, was really ill. And she died really young. But in that movie, Poltergeist 2, you can just tell she's very ill. She did not look good. She had some weird disease that she ended up passing from, but it was not well done at all, I thought.
We could do a whole other show. There's actually been a documentary about the curse of the Poltergeist franchise, but all the actors basically getting extremely ill, all the crew that worked on it having
Dominique
weird,
Dune was
violent
killed
things. Yeah,
by
things
her
happen to
boyfriend.
them. There's a lot.
Yep.
Well, hey, I'm with that. That sounds pretty. Sounds pretty interesting.
They called it. They started calling it. Yeah, the movie Cursed.
Okay, so when Tangina comes on the scene, she states that the ghosts inhabiting the house are in a different sphere of consciousness and are not at rest. Attracted to Carol Ann's life force, these spirits are distracted from the real light that has come for them. So Tangina then adds that there is also a dark presence she calls the Beast, who has Carol Ann under restraint in an effort to use her life force to prevent other spirits from crossing over. She also notes that the Beast is disguising itself as a child, so Carol Ann thinks that she's talking to another child at certain parts in the movie. But when Tangina, when she gives that monologue, I mean, it makes you want to run through the wall because she is so convincing, and it really sucks you in, mainly because she whispered through the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it makes you really kind of, move your head closer to the television. But when she ends that thing and it's like, now let's go get you your daughter, you're like, hell yeah, coach, put me in the game. Let's
Get
go.
that girl.
Yeah, she, you know what I'm saying? So I really do like Tangina as a character. So a little bit later on, the group discovers that the entrance to the other dimension is through the children's bedroom closet where we saw Carol Ann get sucked through, while the exit is through the living room ceiling. So there's a masterful moment of levity when they're getting ready to go through to try to retrieve Carol Ann between Tangina and Diane in this stressful moment when they're holding onto the rope and Tangina's like, I'm going in after her. And Diane is like, she won't let you. And then Tangina says, I'm going to go. And Diane says, but you've never done this before. And then she's like, neither have you. And she's like, you're right, you go, because I don't know
The
what the
look on
hell's
her
going
face
on.
is so priceless. She's like,
It's
she just stops and she like freezes. She's like, you're right, you go.
absolutely. And that has to be, it's definitely got to be a scary experience because you got all that light and all the wind going on. But they managed in this one sequence to have that moment of levity. And then they kind of snuck in the kiss between Steve and Diane before she goes in, and then you've got all the lights and the wind. It was pretty cool how they set that up. So they knocked a lot of thing out of the box in that one little sequence. But I thought that it was pretty cool. So how eager would either of you be ready to jump into another wherever dimension or another place to go get your kids? Is that something that you you give the farewell kiss and
You
just
do that.
figure, hey,
That's what
I'm
you
not
do.
coming back?
That's what you do. It's your kid, man. Yeah. Yep.
So
Absolutely.
how do you come to the decision which person's going to take one for the team? So is it so is it going to be you, Moni, or your husband?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it has to be me, but that's more the dynamic as far as I am more sensitive, like spiritually or whatever else. He'd probably just be like, none of this exists. I'm not going through no portal because
Exactly.
there's no portal to go through.
Yeah.
Plus, I
Exactly.
totally trust that he could handle things here at home and with the other kid,
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd have to be me.
All right, Christy, are you
Yeah.
taking the dive?
Yeah, I'm going. I mean, and again, Rick would be like, this isn't happening. It's like the monster is right in your face. No. No. But your daughter is gone. He's like, no, she ran away.
Yeah,
There's
at
another
this
explanation.
point, though, I think that you probably do have to believe it. I would probably be more like, we might have to take an L on this, honey, but we've got to figure out what we're going to tell the police. No, I understand it. I understand that, probably anybody's going to dive through there for their kids, though. But I thought that was a pretty good moment. And also they kind of explained earlier that we saw that Diane was the one that was mostly around Carol Ann, but we also found out that Steve was the one that was in charge of kind of disciplining the kids. And I think that they did make, a very good decision, because I think the last thing that Carol Ann heard was her dad say that she was going to get a spanking. That's
true.
So that was a good decision.
Yeah, I remember really quick. I'm sorry, when you say that, it just reminded me when I was watching that movie as a child, and I was like shocked because he was like, I would never hit the kids. I would never spank the kids. And she's like, say it anyway. And I'm like, what? You never spank your kids? Whoa, I want to be his parents. Like, I got spanked all the damn time. My God, I had to pick switches off the tree. So I was like so jealous of their family. I was like, wow, you don't spank? I'm moving in with you guys. I don't care if there's a portal in the house.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, really, you don't spank? That was 1982? Man, parents were handing out ass whoopings.
That's right. They'd beat the shit out of you for looking at them
That's
cross-eyed.
something I'm not too old for. I got plenty of those.
Yeah, like 82 was like the time where, lots of communities were closed. So if you went down the street and you acted up, you probably got a spanking at your friend's house. Seriously? And then they called your mom, and then you got a spanking when she got home, and then you had to get another one, when your dad came home. So that was like a chain reaction.
Spank you with. Shit. A feather? I don't know.
And you got spankings at school. You got spankings everywhere. Nobody was afraid to hit you back then. I'll tell you that.
So as the group attempts to rescue Carol Ann, Diane passes through the entrance tied by a rope that's been threaded through both portals. Diane goes in and manages to retrieve Carol Ann, and they both get pulled through and drop to the floor from the ceiling. They're unconscious and covered in ectoplasm. As they recover, Tangina proclaims that this house is now clean. That is one of my favorite parts, is when she's getting pulled through and they hit the ground with that wet.
Yeah.
Just that wet slop.
It's like a what do you call that? I don't know I lost the word for it. But yeah, that stuff. It was almost like coming through a womb or something. It's crazy.
Yeah. That was a big theme in the 80s too, because Ghostbusters, remember, it was all about the slime and the ectoplasm?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Blah.
But this stuff that they were covered in, it looked more like just it looked like lighter colored coagulated blood. It just looked pretty. It looked pretty nasty. So shortly thereafter, the Freelings begin the process, obviously, after they're all back together, of moving. And then we get to see that Diane has these nice white gray hairs that popped out after that experience. I thought that was a great touch. So
Yeah.
After they're packing up their stuff, and during their last night in the house, Stephen leaves for the office in order to quit his job. And Dana goes on a date, leaving Diane, Robbie, and Carol alone in the house. And of course, the beast returns and ambushes Diane and the children, aiming for a second kidnapping by attempting to restrain Robbie and Diane. Now, this is where this motherfucking clown.
God,
Yeah, I had
damn.
jumped ahead. I'm sorry, but the fucking clown.
it comes into the picture here. So, of course, while other people are, why Diane is occupied, this clown that has been strategically placed throughout the whole movie, which should have kind of warned everybody that something was going to happen with it. So Robbie ends up being attacked by the clown, and as we see, he's going to sleep, and he tries to throw a jacket or something over it, and it just rolls off of him. And then he turns back around, and the clown is gone. So he looks on one side of the bed, it's cool. He looks on the other side of the bed, lifts it up, which is kind of a jump scare, kind of to the audience. But when he lifts his head back up, the clown is behind him, and it wraps his arms around his neck. But the whole configuration
face on
of
that
the face,
clown. God dang.
So now it's like the mad clown. Let me tell you something. Of all the things that happened in this movie, I remember this like it was yesterday. It was actually on HBO, and I watched it at a friend's house, and it was a beautiful day outside. It was like, it was just a beautiful day, but it was during the day. And I remember seeing that sequence and walking home at like 2 or 3 o'clock, and that's all I could think about was that damn clown. So when Robbie finally got super pissed off and started ripping it to pieces, that was like my hell yeah moment of the whole movie. Because that got me. I mean, I think that's probably the only thing that's ever made me jump hardcore in a movie was that sequence.
Hell yeah.
I have a question for you guys about the clown. Up until this movie, can you remember any time before that? Because there was a time, obviously, clowns were invented to like bring joy and happy and circus and good feelings. And now we have it and all those other things. Do you remember a time prior to this movie in TV or film that clowns were made scary? Or was this sort of the first introduction of like clowns are scary now?
Ooh, I can't think of anything prior to that.
Not clowns, but dolls, like over made up dolls. Like there was a movie, and I can't think of the name of it. Might have been named Dolls. And then a puppet. There was the one with the puppet, the ventriloquist puppet. That one fucking scared me when I was a kid.
When did Puppet Masters come out? Or
Puppet Masters was in the 90s, I think.
Okay.
But there was one with the ventriloquist doll that was in like the 70s or maybe early 80s. But not a clown. Not that I can think of.
Well, the funny thing about this clown, it wasn't even just that sequence. Like that clown was literally wrestling with Robbie all the way up under the bed, and it was just. But it's the
and it was
change.
laughing the whole time.
Yeah, that crazy ass laugh. First of all, where did that laugh come from? Because I didn't even, you know what I mean? It's like the Poltergeist is a beast because it's totally. But yeah, that was my real gotcha scene from that movie. Yeah. In the master bedroom, Diane is attacked by an unseen force that moves her up the wall and over the ceiling in her room, which is another great sequence when you're talking about. I think actually this sequence was done in a house that they actually built. I think they built a room and then they put it on like this crane or something, and they like turned the room so it looked like she was doing that. But that was pretty. That was a pretty iconic moment as well. So the unseen force drives Diane to the backyard, dragging herself into the swimming pool, and more like she kind of slipped into the swimming pool. So skeletons surround her as she tries to swim to escape, but she manages to climb out of the pool and make her way back to the house. Now let's talk about neighbors. Like, these neighbors suck. But she's out there hysterical. Yeah, I mean, she's out there hysterical.
She's like, help me save my babies. And his wife's like, no.
Like,
okay, another good point for doing this in Orange County, because that's how we do out here in OC and SoCal. It's just like, we're right on top of each other because, property values are so high. So they build the houses like almost like condos. They're right next door. You can see and hear everything, but you don't get involved. There's no friendliness. I don't want to know my neighbor. Like, you do your own thing. I do my own thing. If I saw that shit, I'd probably be like, yeah, fuck that. I don't know what that lady's doing. She's probably on some drugs or some shit. Like,
not my problem.
That's Orange County for you.
Yeah, that was pretty. I mean, that was pretty weird. And both of her neighbors, the married couple, they were just like, no, I'm just not. I like the guy kept acting like he couldn't hear what she was saying, which is code for I'm scared.
Yeah.
The wife was just totally, losing her shit, just asking what those sounds were, but wasn't even concerned about, knowing that they had kids. So
mostly because it's bothering your ability to like watch TV at night. Why are you being so loud over there? Shut the fuck up.
I know, right? So Diane ends up, saying screw them. She runs back in the house and rescues the children, and they eventually escape to the outside of the house and they end up discovering coffins and rotting corpses erupting out of the ground in their yard and throughout their neighborhood. And all, of course, these things were happening in the house as well. So as Stephen and Diane return home from the mayhem, Stephen confronts Teague after realizing that rather than relocating the cemetery for the development of Cuesta Verde, Teague merely had the headstones removed and the bodies left behind. So the Freelings end up fleeing Cuesta Verde while the house implodes on itself and goes into a portal, to the astonishment of neighborhood onlookers. The ending of the movie is a family checking into a hotel for the night. The door closes, and then it opens back up, and Steve rolls the television out onto the walkway. Now, that was definitely pretty funny. Funny note to end it on. But when we're talking about the the bodies. I thought that the bodies erupting out of the pool and throughout the house, I thought that was definitely a great touch. And the implosion of the house was pretty good special effects wise in 1982. So did the movie in itself in the third act live up to your expectations of what a horror movie should be?
Yes. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Very
much. Yeah, the whole thing, like the ending, the beginning, the middle, it was all fantastic. And we didn't talk about it, but that monster, when it reveals itself at the end, and it's that big old white skull looking dinosaur thing.
I've got the
that
GIF
scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. Holy crap. Yeah, you have the GIF in here. That was really scary. I just thought, can you imagine? Like, wow. It was crazy scary to me. Still is.
That door, yeah, because at that point, Diane was just. First of all, I mean, at this point, wouldn't you have passed out at least once? There's just too much shit going on. Like,
God.
I would just be like, oh my
all
gosh,
hell breaks loose. It's just crazy after that. After the rolling room, when she, starts going up the wall, it was like, I guess the clown starts it. And then that, when she hears Robbie crying and she goes to get up, and then that's when she starts crawling up the wall. Insanity after that. It just, like you said, it's just one thing after another in this whole movie. I mean, to have one of these scenes in a movie would be amazing. But when you have all of them in one movie, you're just like, blown away.
And I really did like the interaction between Steve and Mr. Teague when he was yelling, hey, you just moved the gravestones. And Teague just looked like he was, he was just going to die right there.
Yeah. And he was like screaming, why? Like freaking out. And you're just like, holy shit. Like, I would be freaking out too.
Bonuses. Well, the other thing that they've done in this is let me give you an example. The parapsychologists, when all of these events were going on, guess what? Their cameras actually captured it. Like, they're the first person in the history of ever to actually but to actually capture to capture what was going on. So I thought that was that was pretty cool, and also the fact that they made the events that happened things that were visible to people in the community, because when the house got sucked into the portal, all the neighbors were out. People actually saw that. And seeing as the way the movie ended, what do you think happened the next day to the Freelings? I mean, I don't care. I don't care not knowing. But what do you think, happened the next day when you know that so many people saw that? Like, what's your next step in the morning, Moni?
I think the next day they were at a hotel somewhere, just laying way low and like being together all in one room and probably not sleeping very well, or maybe sleeping really well because like this whole nightmare that they've been going through for a while now is over. And I think by the end of that day, the media catches on and it's a shitstorm. And it's probably like, if they're smart, they're at a hotel and nobody knows like where they are, because I'm sure the media at that house, like at the site, would just be insane at that point. And I don't think things could ever quite be the same, at least not for a lot of years.
Yeah, I think they were probably enjoying some quiet and peace after all that.
Yeah.
I don't think that
probably
there's
book
any
deals and interviews coming out of everywhere. Yeah.
I don't think there's any insurance for that.
Poltergeist insurance.
They are on the hook for all of that shit.
They're like, what's the report? They're like, they're like, what happened? Well, my house folded up inside of itself. Excuse me.
They're on the hook for all that shit, and Steve just quit his job.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's real world shit. There,
you leave to another country, you change your name. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, absolutely. But I Chrissy, you were mentioning that this is your favorite horror movie.
Of all time.
To be honest with you, I'm going to tie this with Return of the Living Dead, which is another movie that James Karen is in, and it's definitely a tie, because watching this, I was like, this might be the most well put together, perfect thing, and it all goes back to what we were talking about earlier with ratings. I'm like, this is just totally not a PG movie. I mean, I don't know if. Did y'all watch this? Did y'all watch this with Chris? Did you watch this with any of your kids around, or no?
Yeah. I mean, this is my house, so they have been accustomed to horror for a very long time. They've seen this movie early on, and Madeline hates that music at the end with the kids singing la 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 la. She hates it. It scares her. And my son, it didn't bother him at all. He's a horror movie. He's got it. He does not get scared watching horror. Madeline does, though. She's the older one. But yeah, I still can't believe this is PG. There's no freaking way. Was the new Poltergeist PG? Does anybody know?
I think it was PG-13. Okay. I just saw it at the library the other day. I want to say 13, but I'm not positive.
Okay.
I guess I can double check because there's this thing called IMDb.
Right. There's a thing called Google these days, Christy. You could look it up.
Yeah, I can't check because this computer like cuts out on me. But yeah, I hope it is. My girls are too little, and honestly, my oldest, she's only 6, and she's so fanciful already. Like, she makes up shit that isn't real to suit her narrative. I don't need like a misplaced hairbrush to be the result of a poltergeist. It's already going to be her excuse to like, I will sleep in bed with you forever because this hairbrush wasn't where it was supposed to be, and I'm sure it's a poltergeist. I'm just going to be like, no, let's just not watch this movie. So
yeah, and I mean, is there anything else that y'all want to point out that maybe we didn't cover?
I don't know. What do you guys believe in poltergeists? Do you believe that that's a phenomena that is possible?
I believe it, but I don't believe it in this sense. This is not what poltergeist is, but I do believe it happens, yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's possible. I mean, people have seen all types of things, but some of the things that people see that some people claim might make something a poltergeist might be something that could be, scientifically proven at why it's not. But we're never going to know. We're never going to know. I don't think that poltergeist exists in the context of how it was being presented, in this movie. But who knows?
The movie presents more like a demonic, like overtaking. But if you've ever, I think we've talked about the Bell Witch on this show before. Something like the Bell Witch is more apt to have possibly been poltergeist activity if it's real. Poltergeist activity usually the kind of psychology that's accepted a little bit about it is that it surrounds a specific person. Like maybe that person's gone through some really crazy traumatic events, and that's kind of the theory with the Bell Witch is that she was like molested by her dad or something like that. And a strong personality kind of coupled together that can create like basically whatever storm or trauma is going on inside the person manifests physically throughout the household that they're in. So theoretically, like if these people, this family were to move, if it was Carol Ann that was causing all that, then that would go with them.
Yeah.
So just kind of an interesting theory to put out there. Sorry, Christy, and I totally talked over you.
No, yeah. My personal belief with poltergeist activity is it's triggered by a person, a living person, like manifesting, like as you were saying, kind of manifesting an energy and it creates a haunting. So yeah, you can't really move away from that. It has to be, and a lot of times it's like pre-pubescent teens, teen girls can cause this kind of activity apparently, which I've always found really interesting that makes a lot of sense when you're 13. 13-year-old girls.
Sure you do that.
Oh, yeah.
I have a 6-year-old and I could see having her be a poltergeist. Like,
yeah.
Of course.
So do y'all remember earlier in the show when we were talking about, your husbands and how they, they wouldn't believe that it was going on even if they saw it. And remember that Steve got that moment as well, because when Diane was going through, of course, she says, "Don't let go," which automatically says, "Oh shit, something's about to happen," and he's gonna let go. And then when that skull came out, that was a scary moment. That was a jump scare moment as well. When the big skull came out of the closet and screamed at Steve, and he let go of the rope.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That one's a good one. So if anything will make you a believer, it probably should have been that. But I just wanted to get that in because I was actually really impressed rewatching it after so many years, seeing how good some of these practical effects and wind machines can be.
Yeah. Simple.
Well, I don't have anything else. I think that we covered everything. And actually, this was a good show. This was a fun show to do on this particular movie. So what do you have for us next week, Moni?
Well, as Yardley mentioned, we are going to cover Us. So that's the new movie coming out. And if you don't want to be spoiled, please skip it and come back to it once you've had a chance to see the film. But I'm very excited to see it. Again, as he mentioned, 100% ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. And also, I am going to do a little ghost hunt again this weekend at a cemetery that I haven't been to in many years. And I was really young when I used to go, and I had a lot of experiences there that I kind of want to revisit and see now that I've sort of accepted that I feel like I kind of am more sensitive to some of these things, how different this experience will be for me. It's located in Riverside. It's well over 100 years old. So I am excited to share anything that might happen there with you guys as well. So look for that along with our review and going through the movie Us. And also, just real quick, as I was on IMDb and I had mentioned Puppet Master, I haven't seen that movie in years. I don't remember being very impressed with it, but there's actually a new one. It's called The Latest Reich, and it's from 2018. And it stars actually, it looks like it's available, I think, on Amazon Prime. And it stars Thomas Lennon, who usually is known for kind of his comedic work. So it has a 5.7 out of 10, and it went straight to video, or straight to digital and whatever else. So anyway, if you guys are interested in the Puppet Master canon, maybe check this movie out as well.
Hell yeah, I actually have. I wonder, I don't have that one, but I think I've got all of the other ones. I found it like in might have been in I don't know if it was in a Walmart bin or somewhere, but it was like
$5.
Yeah, it was like all of them, but it's not the 2018 one. But those are cool. I actually have the figures of all of those things.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, they're actually they're propped up in my office at work. But yeah, I mean that's some guilty pleasure cheese as well. I mean, for me, if you can enjoy Chucky, you can enjoy you know what I mean, the Puppet Master, or if you can get through a Chucky movie, you should be able to get through these. But great selection. I look forward to that. And now while we're at it, why don't you give us your handle on social media?
I am Rebel Moni on Twitter, all kinds of exciting stuff going on there as we move into WonderCon. And also, I am Moni Bear on Instagram.
Cool, Christy.
I am at creepin_it on Twitter and creepinit Christy on Instagram.
And you can follow me on Twitter at militant_marker. And go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/The Creeping It Real Show.
Yes.
Christy's always posting and Moni. They're always posting some funny memes and information on there. And I try to keep trailers and things like that up there. And whenever I find something cool, I try to dump it as well. So check us out there. There's some very cool people who respond. And also, just want to let everybody know we're totally into feedback. So if you have any suggestions of certain things that you would want us to consider to do on the show, feel free to shoot us a message on Facebook or tweet us on the Twitters, and we'll definitely look at it because we definitely want to tailor content to things that people are passionate about, or there might be something in pop culture that we don't know about that you can put us on to. So with all that being said, until next time, keep it real.
Thank you, everybody.
Ghost notes at the bottom of this conversation. Drop my keys and phone against the rough pavement. Screens crack, but I still can't hear alright. String of words that I think I've used before. Can't think of another creative way to twist it.
Walking down the street, all the funky people.